Lisa Feeley here. Good evening. Another show of an accountable Catholic. And as followers of Jesus and believers of a great God, we really need to commit ourselves to being more accountable. So in that light, I have a great guest that we're asked to come on our show, and he's joined us. I'm going to give you your title first. I know that's not what you do now, but he's a retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. I'm very impressed. I love your background. And now he serves as a commissioner out in New Mexico. So all the way from New Mexico, Mr. Jay Block, thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Lisa, it's great to be back with you again for my second appearance. Well, I was born and raised in Manchester, New Hampshire. I went out to, grew up in a 3-decker apartment building there. I came from a lower middle class neighborhood. Had, unfortunately, drugs impacted my family with my parents pretty heavy, and it impacted me as well. In different ways where I'm just very anti-drug, but didn't have much money, had to enlist in the reserves, went off to college at North Dakota State. It was cheaper to go to school in the Midwest for me. My parents didn't have money. And I went out there, I worked my way through school with numerous jobs. I ended up also getting a scholarship in my last 2 years that covered most of my stuff for the as an ROTC cadet in the Air Force. Graduated from North Dakota State. Go Bison, wearing it right here.
All right.
Yeah, love my school. So always got to put a plug in for North Dakota State and Fargo. So please apply and go. You'll love it.
I love it. Good school.
And went off to the Air Force for 21 years, basically as a nuclear officer and ICBM launch officer for Minuteman III, as a maintenance officer on Minuteman III, nuclear policy officer at the Pentagon. I also was the commander and senior American twice on foreign soil in the Netherlands and on the British island in the South Atlantic, Ascension Island. Volunteered for a combat tour in Afghanistan in 2005, 2006. Probably the best part of my career. And the worst part of my career in some ways too was being over there, but organizing a lot of humanitarian missions around the Kabul area. It was just probably the most amazing thing I ever did in my military career was doing that stuff. Served in Germany as a deputy group commander for a nuclear mission over with our NATO partners, and then came back to New Mexico in July of 2015 at Kirtland Air Force Base. My career is basically over. I owed the Air Force a year. I was ready to go do something else, and got into private industry as a nuclear consultant with a science and technology firm, and then decided to continue to serve here in New Mexico as a county commissioner. I decided to stay here. I fell in love with the area. It's beautiful scenery. It's a lot of great culture here. The food is amazing. So come to New Mexico and try the green chili. I'm more of a green guy than a red guy. And the people are just amazing. It's incredible history here that goes back thousands of years. So
Mexico is beautiful. Well, what an incredible story. And I know earlier, so I'll have you go back on it a little. I mean, you could have easily fallen into a very victim mindset, which to me is not the right mindset to get you, to get going in an incredible life that you had. Why do you think, or what prevented you from not going that direction? When we talk about morality too, I do think when you fall into that victim mindset, you're more subject to, I guess, making some poor decisions too, because you don't know what to believe.
Well, I made a lot of mistakes, Lisa, growing up. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes. But I had my grandparents who were extremely influential in my life. Basically, I lived in the same apartment building as they did. And they were very moral people. My grandfather was Jewish, became a Catholic when he met my grandmother during World War II. And they were both heavily involved in the church. For them, it was their faith and their family. And that was what guided their lives well into their 90s. They were married over 63 years together. And they had, like any married couple, they had issues, but they were just very moral people. I looked up to them. I wanted to be like my grandfather. Even my parents, with the issues with my parents, in my mind, my parents were good people because they really loved me. They wanted me to do well. They wanted me to do better than them. And I'm very close to my parents still. My parents always told me to get a good education and work hard, and things will work out. And my grandparents told me the same thing. And my mother, who was a truck driver, always had this saying. I can't say the word, but she used to always say, "Jay, don't go around thinking your crap doesn't stink." And so my mother always told me to just stay humble. Just stay humble with whatever it is you do in life. Give credit where credit's due. So I had a great career, but I'll tell you what, a lot of airmen helped me make that a great career. And same thing with my career in politics as I get ready to run for governor here in New Mexico. The people of New Mexico have really pushed me and helped me out along the way. It's not me. And when I was a commander in the Air Force, my airmen who were doing the job day to day deserve all the credit. And I keep in touch with a lot of men and women who I commanded, and it's great. I love them. And I guess what I'm trying to tell you is stay humble, stay focused on your goal. Don't get down. I know you're gonna get down, but don't blame anybody. Whatever happens to you, whether it's fair or not fair, life isn't fair. Take what comes at you and just keep pressing ahead. You're gonna come out stronger on the other side. I guarantee you.
Great. And I know, being an Air Force brat myself, my dad being a retired U.S. Air Force lieutenant colonel, so I love that you've got some fantastic core values that the Air Force teaches you. Could you share those with our listeners? Even though we might not all be Air Force, I think that a lot of that goes for being a moral leader in life.
Yeah, so our Air Force core values were integrity, service before self, and excellence in all we do. And I really loved those core values. But, we're all sinners. And, we try, those core values are there to guide us. We strive to meet them. In the nuclear business, you strive for perfection. But human beings are imperfect people. We make mistakes. We can make decisions that are immoral. We can act immorally sometimes still when we move away from God. And I'm not perfect by any means. We're all sinners, and I've sinned. But you have to have these values, your personal values, whether they're the Air Force or your personal values, whatever they are. Those values have to guide you, and you're not always going to meet those particular values. But just because you fail here and there, and you will fail, you just have to learn from those failures and move on and keep pressing ahead.
Very good. And I mean, along those lines, we're going to talk a lot here, and I'll have to take a break here shortly. But, when you hear throughout our country, especially you when you're running for governor, which is fantastic, you hear about, oh, our country, we're terrible. We're systemic this, systemic that, like systemic racism. I really don't think systems create themselves. It's the people behind whatever system's happening. I don't think a system itself is racist. I think that we people, like you say, we have failed, we make bad decisions, and now it's up to us to change that, right? We have got to get moral leadership in there. We've got to stop letting, in my mind, our leaders tell us that, oh, well, we can be completely, different people at home in what we believe, but hey, we're going to be a very different leader. I mean, no, if you're a moral leader, you're a moral leader. If you're not, in my mind. So what say you, Jay? How do we get through this?
Listen, this country is a moral country. This country is a great country. This country has made mistakes, yes. And we've paid for those mistakes with, I'm talking just the Civil War. We lost 600,000 lives. I mean, we went to war to liberate a race 80 years, almost 90 years after we became independent or declared our independence in 1776.
Yes.
No other country can say that. We have passed civil rights legislation. We've gotten rid of segregation. We've gotten rid of Jim Crow. We have passed anti-discrimination. We passed affirmative action. This country gives preferences to those that are minorities that this country believes deserves a hand, not a handout, but a hand up. We've made mistakes as Americans, but Americans are not a racist people. We're not systemically racist. No, I don't even know what percentage systemic is. No one can tell me. I don't know what that means. When I look at, I've just, they are using this racism. It's identity politics. It's classic Saul Alinsky leftist propaganda to divide us. And, you see this, they're teaching like race theory now. Listen, I just said it before, we're all made in God's image. Be proud of who you are and where you came from. I'm proud that, my family has deep Jewish roots. Do I think people hate me because they probably don't even know my Jewish blood or my Jewish history? Don't use that as an excuse. Be proud of who you are, whether you're white, black, Asian, Native American, Hispanic. It doesn't matter. We're all human beings. This is a great country. And if this was such a racist and crappy country, why would we have thousands of people coming to our southern border right now to get away from their countries? Because they know it's not a racist country. They know they can have opportunities here in the United States. You can't go to any other country. I can't go to Germany and be a German. I can't go to Japan and be Japanese, but anybody can come here and be American. That's what's so great about this country. This whole thing of it's systemically racist and evil is a bunch of BS. And I'm just tired of it. And I think people are tired of it because they're cramming it down our throats every single day. And the word racist, that's a pretty ugly word. But when people keep using it over and over and over, it gets diluted and it loses its meaning. To me, it does. So people just are tired of hearing about it. They want to go on with their lives. They want to be left alone. They want to be able to have a good job and put their kids in good schools and live in safe neighborhoods and save money for vacation, save money for college or whatever for their kids. Yes. That's it. I mean, we're inundated with all this divisiveness and people are just tired of it. And this is how the left, in my opinion, the left wins by dividing us. We're Americans first. Nobody else has a country like ours. And this is the last best place on earth, because if we lose this country, where the hell do we go?
And I agree with you that while we have to learn from our history too, we've got to go forward. I mean, and I guess that's what I'd love to ask you as you go into, hopefully being a future governor in our country, is how do we get past this misunderstanding? Or again, and I hate, I don't want to go into it. I won't say, hey, I dislike playing left, right, Republican, not Republican. We're all Americans. So how do we help all Americans understand equity versus this equal outcome? Like you said, we're very willing and very open, I think, as a country. And, 95% of us, especially so many of us are Catholics and Christians, right? We're a very Christian country.
Yeah.
We're absolutely helpful for a hand up, right? We're helpful to help our brothers and help our sisters. But now there's this whole push, Jay, as, it has to be equal outcomes. It can't be equal outcomes. That's not the way the world works.
When they start talking, we're going to make sure we have equal outcomes. They're talking socialism and communism. And by the way, there's still an elite ruling class in the socialist system and the communist system, and they will fail. They will fail because the government will control every aspect of business, of production, of supply and demand. They're going to control every aspect of what you can say, your rights, where you can live, where you can go to school. That's not equality. That's just pure evil. It just doesn't happen. Now, yeah, there's privilege in this country because that's just the way it is. You're not going to change that. You're going to have children that are born to affluent families, whether they're born to, I don't know, take a basketball player in the NBA, LeBron James. Do you think LeBron James's kids are going to have more privilege than my kids? Of course they are.
Right. Has nothing to do with the color or the age or the height or any of that.
Listen, what's so great about America is we're all unique and we're all individuals, and we can make it in this country based on how hard we work and what our talents are. And yeah, you're still going to have privilege. You're going to have economic privilege because you're going to have people that are wealthier than other people. But that doesn't mean you're stuck in that ring of society. I've been able to move up into a pretty decent middle class, upper middle class income bracket.
I mean, we got to take a quick break here, but when we come back, I might challenge a little on this whole privilege word, because that drives me bananas as a Christian and a Catholic, someone that follows Jesus. If we're born in his image and we're all born with the grace of God, he has a plan for us. So, but we'll come right back. So we'll take a 1-minute break here. Thanks so much, Jay. Stick with us. For all of you listeners, we'll be right back.
Carolina Catholic Radio is excited to announce an alliance with Lisa Feeley, author of An Accountable American. Her new book offers a blueprint to every person who wants to embrace how to be accountable. Learn how positively to impact your life and the lives of anyone around you. 50% of the book profits will be donated to a local 501c3 Catholic charity, including Carolina Catholic Radio and those affiliated with us. If you want to learn how to achieve enlightenment, peace, and prosperity, this is a great start. Now back to An Accountable Catholic Radio show.
Well, welcome back. This is Lisa Feeley again, and we are back with Jay, and we're going to continue talking about really moral leadership. And one of the things, Jay, that you were saying before the break, and I just kind of want to challenge a little or get more input on it, is this idea of privilege, and then I'm going to say Christian values and Christian beliefs, because we really true believers of Jesus, I don't believe in privilege. I really don't. I think we're asking the wrong questions. We're trying to get everybody's gander up, and that throws people into a victim mindset. When I look at privilege, and people would say, I'm privileged, I'm saying, look, my parents and your parents, grandparents, right? They worked very, very hard. They achieved a lot in life. And my dad was poorest of 12, dirt poor. So why are we trying to harm today's children by having this mindset of telling them they're privileged? And I would love your take on this as hopefully a future governor of New Mexico. How do you work through that and help others understand, there's not systemic racism. There's not, all this, we have to guarantee equal outcomes. We're in America.
There's some political philosophies that believe in the individual, and there's some that believe in the collective. I believe in the individual. I believe that we're all different, and I think that's a good thing. Men and women are different. Men are different from other men. We all have our special talents. We all have our special gifts. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. That's what makes us so unique and children of God. I agree completely that you are born into certain privileges in your life, whether you're born into a wealthy family or not. You're not going to get away from that. This is the United States. It's a very diverse country. There's no equality in the United States. People just cannot be equal across the board. You're going to have better baseball. I mean, I wanted to be a baseball player and play for the Red Sox. Was I discriminated against? Well, yeah, I was discriminated against because I wasn't good enough to play.
Well, you might not have been tall enough or fast enough, but geez Louise,
Yeah, I mean, I'm over 6 feet, but, I was a pitcher, so I couldn't throw the ball hard enough, or fast enough. So, yeah, I was discriminated against, and I was put over here because, your career is done playing baseball, and you keep going based on your talents.
Okay, but that's not discrimination. That's God using your talent somewhere else.
Well, I felt like it. I felt like
my little violin's going to play, Jay, if you do that. No, I'm teasing. Yeah, no, I agree.
I was such a victim. Yeah, I was such a victim. No, I wasn't a victim. That's just the way it is. We compete, and you have to find out what you're good at. If you're good at teaching, go teach. If you're good at being a plumber, God bless you. Go be a plumber.
Be the best plumber and be the best plumber you can be.
Exactly. So I don't think anyone can do, if you're Jewish or Black or Hispanic, I don't think any college is going to say you can't be a plumber because you're Jewish or you're Black or you're white or something. There's no systemic racism anywhere. You will get ahead and you'll do well based on your talents. And again, I think a lot of people want to, make you feel like you're the victim and make you and by the way, that just makes you really unhappy your whole life if you're going to have this victim mentality of like, oh, I couldn't do this, because my mom or dad wasn't wealthy, or I couldn't do this because of my skin color, or I couldn't do this because of my religion, or I couldn't do this because I'm short or something like that, or I was too tall, or I was too fat, too skinny, whatever. That just keeps you down, is all that does. And by the way, when you're just upset and you're upset all the time and you're mad and depressed because you're a victim, it takes a toll on you physically, mentally, and spiritually. It takes you away from God. It takes a toll on you mentally. It starts breaking down your immune system and making you more unhealthy. So that, and by the way, and then you're weaker, you're easier to control when you do that. If you just say, look, all right, I didn't make the team, or okay, I didn't get into that college or whatever, or I got fired or something. Okay, let me learn from my mistake and let me figure this out. And I'm just going to press ahead because my life is more important than being a victim.
Good. I love it. And you and I chatted earlier too, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on term limits, because when we look again at moral leadership, to me, moral leadership doesn't allow us to be complacent, but I don't know anybody that is going to take on 30 to 40 years of being in government and not becoming complacent. Therefore, they're letting us down. That's not what our country was founded on, was it, Jay? I mean,
no, these people go to Washington, they stay there too long, they forget about who they are, where they came from, they forget about the people they're supposed to represent. We need term limits. There's, all they really care about is raising money and scoring political points. Both sides, by the way, do this. On the other side, to get reelected. I just won reelection. I'm term limited out for 8 years as a county commissioner. And by the way, Lisa, I would not run for a third term. Someone else can take my place. I'm done. The governor is term limited, but it's funny, the legislature is not term limited in Washington, D.C., or here in New Mexico and other states as well. It's because they don't want it. They want to stay in power. And, the premise of this country, of its elected leaders at the beginning, was you go to Washington, or you go to your state capital, you do your time, you come home, you go back to your farm, your shop, you're a merchant, whatever you are, and then that's it, you're done, someone else will go. And that, by the way, I firmly believe in term limits because it takes a lot of the influence out of people to do the right thing, because they're going to be like, you know what, I'm not here very long, so I'm just, and I don't really, I don't care. I'm not here very long, so I'm going to do what I think is right for the people, and then I'm going to go back to New Mexico or New Hampshire or North Dakota and go back to my business and do my stuff.
Well, they lived in a world of reality, right? We had farmers, we had printers. I mean, go back to Benjamin, Franklin and all that. I mean, they cared about the country. They were real patriots, to my mind. Today, it's just, hey, all I want is my $250,000 for life. So here's my question as a concerned citizen and a Christian and a mom and a wife. How do you hear rumors, I guess, and I'd love to know if you know the true fact, that term limits have to be a constitutional amendment. I mean, can we get to a point where, please, we can get term limits? Because I think 85 or 90% of our country wants term limits.
Ed Cruz has been pushing term limits and wants to get it done. I don't believe it needs to be a constitutional amendment. Many people don't believe it needs to be a constitutional amendment.
Okay.
The problem is that, and they're going to argue, well, the people are the term limits. Well, okay, I get that, but there's been so much money that influences how people vote. You don't really have term limits. And the other part that you have to stop doing is doing this damn gerrymandering every 10 years when you do redistricting in the country, because all it does, there is a ruling political elitist class in this country. And they are just, number one, they're dividing us so they get to stay in power. And this is both parties, by the way.
Yes, I was just going to say, this is everyone. Yep.
In full transparency, I'm a Republican. But that doesn't mean, I'm a patriot and American first over my party. But yeah, I mean, when you see the redistricting with the gerrymandering, and they don't want term limits, and they love the lobbyist money that comes in. They love the status of it. They have just they've lost it for the people. They're no longer there for the people, but there for themselves. I mean, you look at Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority and Minority Leader. Schumer was a congressman for many years before he was in the Senate, and McConnell's been there since God knows who.
I have stats in my book, and it's 63% of all Democrats and 37% of all Republicans have. I mean, there's some people that have been there 45, 50 years. I mean, you got to be kidding me.
Well, Joe Biden's a prime example. He was elected to the Senate in 1972. All the way became vice president in 2008, and so he had a 4-year break from 16 to 20 where he made millions and billions of dollars off his public life in his name. How that is such swamp and such corruption right there. And by the way, not just Biden, so many other people do it.
Right.
And if you had term limits, I think would you still have corruption? Of course.
Yep.
But would you have the issues that we have today in this country? I don't think you would. And I would argue that this would be a much better country, would be less divided if you had term limits.
So I'm going to get you on the air if you'll do it. So if you become governor, are you behind term limits?
Listen, I will support. Well, I'm term limited as a governor as well for 2 terms.
Right.
And by the way, that's a good thing.
But I meant for all of Congress, like Senate, everyone needs to be out after 2 terms. Gone.
I think 2 terms in the Senate, which is 12 years. Here in New Mexico, state senators are 4 years. But the one thing I don't like how the forefathers set up our Constitution was our state reps, and our U.S. congressmen or Congress, because it's every 2 years, and I understand why they did that to go back to the people, but they are just constantly on the phone raising money is all they're doing. And I think if you maybe made that seat 3 years or 4 years and you have 2 or 3 terms and you're done, I think that would be probably better. That's something I would definitely like to look at. And I think I would probably favor instead of every 2 years, because you're just in election mode. You're raising money. You're controlled by lobbyists, and it's not good for the country.
Yeah, and we, the normal people, I'm going to say, probably don't understand any of that. I would think, why don't you just make everybody 4 years? It's so easy. Make House Rep 4 years, Senator 4 years, President 4 years. It just makes it easier.
The forefathers set it up where the Senate, because the upper chamber would basically 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 with 33 of the senators up for election every 2 years, where the House is everyone boom. So you could do that. Here in New Mexico, the state senators are every 4 years. They all are together on the presidential years. So that's kind of interesting. It works. And I think in today's environment, you probably could do something like that, because there's a lot of staff there in DC on these committees that, you still would have the continuity of what's going on. So I could probably look at that.
I just think, my only other thing that I hear all the time, because I travel, most of my life, I'm out 2 weeks covering half the country or more than half the country. Why is it, and I know now we're getting kind of into politics, but I'm going to go back to it's an accountability issue. Why is it that there's so much money? So if average Joe Schmo wants to run, you look at Joe the plumber situation or whatever, if these wonderful people that are good Americans, good moral leaders really want to run, I don't even know the numbers anymore. I'm sure you're closer to them, Jay. What's it cost? $2 or $3 million to become a House of Rep? This is out of control. That's not normal.
Look, I'm just a dumb nuclear weapons guy. And the way I see it is you need, I'm going to have to raise, $10 million or more to be governor.
That's crazy.
Oh, it's nuts. It's ridiculous. But why? Well, I need staff. I need social media. I need mailers. You have to do all this because it's basically, what you're doing, Lisa, is you're keeping up with the Joneses, is what you're doing. But I'm
saying, why can't we just have a whole new law that says, guess what? We're going to win elections like we did in high school. You're allowed to put posters up. You're allowed to shake hands. You're going to have a forum. Huh?
Yeah, that's grassroots, and that's what
right.
I did. That's what I did my first election, and even my reelection.
Right.
But there's also here's where I have a little bit of a difficult time with that, because there's freedom of speech. If I want to donate to a particular candidate a certain amount of money, you're topped out on a certain amount of money. That's my freedom of speech and how I want to express myself and have some say in the political process. Now you got just a ton of dark money, you got a ton of PACs that come in,
Right.
and these politicians will find ways around campaign finance like they did with McCain-Feingold.
Exactly. But that's what we have to get rid of in my mind. I mean, that's as bad as gerrymandering to me.
My website is block, BLOCK, for New Mexico.com. You can donate there. I would be honored if small donor, everything is accepted. It really is.
Thank you, Jay, for joining us on this show, and we'll hopefully do everything we can to help you out. So God bless, and everybody come on back next Thursday, 5 o'clock for another show on An Accountable Catholic.